Hi USD 262 families, Greg Lear here, Superintendent here in Valley Center Public Schools. Wanted to take a minute. I tried to do a Facebook Live. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out the way we had hoped. So what I want to do is actually make another video, which I'm going to do right now, take you through the slides and explain it, answer the questions people had. That way, the video goes along with the slideshow so people can follow along, because I know it could be kind of confusing. So I apologize for the technical difficulties with the Facebook Live. Hopefully this one works better and is able to, it's easier to follow along. So with that, what I want to talk about is the USD 262 bond. Share some information so that you know what's going on and you have a good idea as to what's in the bond itself. So let's get started. The first part I want to talk about is just the capacity and kind of the rationale for the bond and why we're having the bond issue. So as you can see from this slide, these are the schools that are currently in USD 262. You can see Abilene, the pre-K total, then also Abilene Elementary, West, Wheatland, the intermediate school, the middle school, and the high school. You can see the numbers right here, the enrollment for each school, also our existing district total as of this time. So as you can see by this number, the percentage of capacity, you can see that Abilene pre-K is 122%, we're at 97%, 80%, 75%. You can really see kind of the pinch point is kind of what we're calling is the intermediate school at 105%, the middle school at 97%, and also the high school 91%, creeping up there. You can see the max capacity and what they're designed to hold. So the max capacity isn't where you want to get necessarily. They're designed with a certain amount of students in mind, and so that's the ideal capacity for a school. So you can kind of see where we are, and the reality is the intermediate school is more than full, and the middle school is at 97%. So they're actually really close to design capacity, but pretty close to being full. So as you can see by this, we're pretty full across the board. So here's another way of looking at just our overall enrollment in Valley Center for the last 10 years. So you can see that in 2013 and 14, 2,766 kids. And this last year we had 3,204 kids at the end of this last school year. So overall growth of 482 students since 2013-14, or a 1.7% average, but you can see those percentages definitely vary from year to year. So you can kind of see each building, kind of where they are enrollment wise and how those numbers have somewhat fluctuated from year to year. Just a few facts about capacity and where we are in the district. So we've grown, like I said, by about 482 students in the last 10 years, which is the equivalent of what the intermediate school is right now. So, and right now there's actually about the same amount of kids in the middle school as there were when the building housed 4 grades before the new high school was built a little over 10 years ago. So you can see the differences there in terms of numbers. We're getting close to 800 at the middle school, and the high school was about anywhere between 820 to 850 when there were 4 grades there. So you can see some of the growth in terms of numbers. Like I said, there's about a 1.7% yearly average growth for 10 years, 544 students, 2.9% from 2017 to 2020, about 930 students. And last year we grew by 3.7%, about 1,200 students if we grow that much over the next 10 years. So our capacity right now total is about 3,400 students. With this bond issue, it would bring us up to 4,684 students. So you can see that with capacity, with us growing the way we are, we'll actually have the capacity with this bond to sustain the growth and be good to go. So one of the things with this that people have asked questions about in terms of enrollment, like, is this predictable? And it is somewhat predictable, somewhat it's not. So there was a study done in April of 2022 that talked about student enrollment in Valley Center schools and where that might be in USD 262. Their prediction was that in the next 5 years, the 2026-27 school year, we would have about 3,100 students in the district. We surpassed that this last year. So keep in mind the study was done in April of 22, In April of 23, we had 3,200 students. So actually we surpassed that in 1 year. So while enrollment figures are, you do have people predict, they are somewhat up in the air and are very difficult to predict from year to year. So well, one of the questions people ask obviously is so we know we're at capacity, we're proposing this bond. What is the cost of this? So the bond is set for $73,900,000. And one of the things that's important to keep in mind there is it can never be higher. So that number is set. If we go over budget, or if a project is over budget, then we have to look at what we've proposed and we have to look at cutting things out of that bond, of the bond issue, because we simply cannot go higher than that number. So if bids come back, and hopefully they come in, we've hired Alloy Architecture as our architect. They've come in and done a lot of these plans. They're connected with building and they know how much things cost. But if some things come in over and we have to cut, we'd have to cut things out. We can never go higher. To get that $74 million, it's about a 2.5 mil increase. So a mill is your level of taxation. You can see our district mill levy right there on the side. We get about $200,000 is about, depending on which fund it goes to, is about what we get per mill levy per mill in the district. So we're 2.5 mils based on a 5% increase in assessed valuation through 2027. After 2027, this 2.5 mils, it actually goes down to a 2% valuation increase after 2027. So the valuation goes down. With this mill levy, if this bond does pass, it'll raise it up to 61.158, which if you look on here, 61.158, which is where it would still be lower than what we paid in 2015-16, 13-14, 12-13. So you can see pretty consistent as far as the district mill levy, but that's where that dot right there is where we would be. So one of the things I just talked about is the assessed valuation, and the 5% is what this is based on. A 2.5 mil increase for a 5% evaluation increase. Well, if you look at our assessed valuation in the last 10 years for USD 262, we've actually grown by 6.48%. So remember that 5% increase is based on your assessed valuation. So if we go up more than that, the potential to maybe not have to go 2.5 mils could be there. We could potentially go lower. The last 5 years, we've increased by 9.77%. So again, if our assessed valuation goes higher, the potential for us to lower taxes and keep them lower where they are could be there. Now it also goes the other way. If our assessed valuation goes the other way, we may have to raise taxes in some areas to cover that. So there's no guarantee what could happen. The 5% estimate is a pretty conservative estimate considering where we've been the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years as well, and the last 3 years. So, and with all the new houses going in, one of the questions that was asked in the previous was, with assessed valuations changing, more houses being built, what does that do to the tax rate? Well, with houses being built, assessed valuations going up, the potential to spread that tax base among other houses and among other people could allow us potentially to lower taxes. That is a possibility. So those things could happen. You just don't know in the future. Kind of like enrollment, right? Yeah, we kind of have an idea of what they might do, but the reality is you don't know until those things happen. So what does that mean for you? Talking about mills, mill levy, those things are not always the easiest thing to talk about and hard to understand. So kind of in simple terms, just looking at the assessed valuations for different homes in Valley Center, in Sedgwick County. So the median value for a home in Sedgwick County is a little over $150,000, right in there in between $150,000 and $160,000. So what that means is if you own a house that's valued tax-wise at $150,000, you would pay $3.59 more per month for this bond. Now, that doesn't mean you could sell your house for $150,000, many times your tax assessed valuation is less than what you could sell your home on the housing market. So just because your house is assessed at $150,000 doesn't mean that you couldn't sell it for quite a bit more than that amount. So that's what you're taxed on. What does that mean in real life? What does that money mean? Well, even a $200,000 valuation, it's only $4.79 more a month. That's less than a day pass on the Wichita bus transit. It's less than a Big Mac, less than your Netflix subscription per month. It's less than a gallon of orange juice. And the reality is that $3.59, that's less than a dozen eggs right now. So there's quite a few things that it's less than in order to pay for this bond issue. So one of the questions also is what's included in the bond. Well, here's the list, and it is a fairly extensive list, so I won't go over all of it in great detail, but the big piece is the new elementary school, and around $34 million for that. One of the questions people have asked is why an elementary school when the issue is really intermediate middle school? Well, what we would do is with the intermediate school and middle school, we would actually shift 6th grade back from the middle school back into the intermediate school. The intermediate school would become a 5th and 6th building once again. The middle school would go to 7th and 8th. And this new elementary school would allow us to put 4th grade back into the elementary schools. So what that would do, we would be able to spread kids out among 4 schools instead of just 3 schools. Some people have said, well, why don't you just build another middle school? It's about $70 million, 70, to build a middle school. So actually doing it this way and shifting grade levels is actually much more economical than building a brand new middle school. So you can see one of the good things about this bond, one of the things about it that's a positive is actually it touches every single building in the district. Every single student, whether it's pre-K through 12th grade, through the Learning Center, through the Next Steps Academy, every single student that's enrolled in Valley Center schools in any type of way in USD 262 will be impacted by this. So the elementary school is a big part of it. 20 new classrooms onto the high school. The high school was built at the time, around 800, a little over 800 students at the time. We're over 1,000 now at the high school. That's in a little over 10 years. So having 20 new classrooms on that north side is important. We're looking at what's called a supplemental program center. That supplemental program center could house our Next Steps Academy. It could house some of our special education students. It could house some of our adult learners, a lot of different options for that supplemental program center. And then you can see we're also, we know that at the intermediate school, we need to add some classrooms. So adding some classrooms to the intermediate school to reduce class sizes. And then also looking at some different projects here and there that need to be done to help us with efficiency and help us with our class sizes. So one of the things somebody asked, would there be some things that got cut? But if we're over budget, some of these things that are in here could be potentially cut if we were over budget. Here's a few drawings just of what it could potentially look like. The 20 classrooms, this is Valley Center High School. You can see that we could potentially add the 20 classrooms right onto this wing. Valley Center High School was built with that in mind, that if we needed to add on to it, it actually is built to add that hallway there on the north side. One of the things that goes along with that, our school actually, this is a FEMA shelter right here, but given the amount of students we have now, we actually would need to build another FEMA shelter for safety because we wouldn't be able to fit everybody in this FEMA shelter. Some SPED offices and then some CTE engineering additions. Supplemental Program Center that I talked about, these are just some hypothetical positions at the high school. You can see this is Valley Center High School parking lot. Don't really have a spot picked out for that as well. And then the last kind of a rough drawing, just an overhead drawing of what an elementary school could potentially look like. No plans in place per se of what it would look like. Also, one of the questions people have, do you have a location for this? There is no location picked out for the elementary school currently. Right now, focus on just sharing information on the bond. But if the bond does pass, those are conversations that we'll have once we get to that point. Some of the bond wording I think is important. One of the things, like I talked about, you cannot go over that amount. It's actually in the bond wording. You have to make sure you follow the bond wording. So general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $73,900,000. So we cannot go over this number. And then you can see it talks about construct, furnish, and equip a new elementary school, equip, furnish district facilities. The pre-K facility would be for district staff, but also our pre-K facility, our pre-K keeps continuing to grow, so having that facility at Abilene, but then also some different renovations and things in there that we talked about earlier. Well, how do I vote? This will be coming in the mail here in the next day or so. I know it kind of looks like junk mail. It is not, so if you see it, make sure you don't throw it away. Make sure you vote. The school board did choose a mail-in ballot. We actually, research shows that mail-in ballot actually has a higher return, so the board wanted to make sure they got as many voices as possible on this bond, so that's why they chose to have a mail-in ballot versus an in-person vote. And there's some more of those instructions that go along with that voting. Well, one of the questions people have asked is, what if the bond doesn't pass? We saw the numbers earlier. We are at capacity. Here in the next couple of years, we're going to have to figure something out, maybe in the next year or so. Well, since we are at capacity, one of the things that we'll have to do as an alternative is to bring in mobile classrooms. If you'll remember the old Valley Center High School, which currently the middle school, there used to be a mobile classroom on the south side. That was just one mobile classroom that looks similar to this, a little bit different, but similar. And so that mobile classroom housed a couple classes. We would have to do the same thing at Valley Center High School. And these are just rough drawings I just put together. We don't know where they would go specifically, but we know the high school would need some space, intermediate school as well. And we would have to figure out something at the middle school as well to make sure we have the space. And, one of the things that's definitely a drawback to these mobile classrooms is one of the things that happened in a couple of the different bond issues we've had in the previous 10 years or so is we've tried to make our buildings as secure as possible and as safe as possible. We've done FEMA shelters in our buildings to make sure storm shelters were as safe as possible. We have very secure schools. They have instant background checks, and unfortunately, if we went to mobile classrooms, we're really, sacrificing the safety in a lot of ways, and that our buildings would have to have doors unlocked for our students to enter and exit the building because they wouldn't be attached. And so students would, especially at the high school level, students would be free to kind of go in some different doors depending on, and it just sacrifices kind of the safety of our kids. So that's kind of what would happen if the bond doesn't pass. So I had some questions as well that were in the Facebook Live I want to talk about real quick. Is if we're at capacity now, if we're too full in the next year or so, what would happen? We could have mobile classrooms that start appearing even in the next year, depending on where we are. A lot of times you can lease those for a year or so, or you can purchase them either way. But those are some things that you could do. Another question is, what about out-of-district students? How would they contribute to this? Well, out-of-district students, one of the ways they do contribute is we do get money for out-of-district students. So we actually are paid by the state for the amount of money, for the amount of out-of-district students we take. We have a limited out-of-district enrollment policy. So not every student that's out-of-district can come to Valley Center. They have to meet a certain group list of stipulations, whether they have a sibling in the district, if their parent is a staff member in the district. Those are some things people have to do in order to be an out-of-district student in the district. Now in the 2024-2025 school year, every district in the state of Kansas is open. Our state legislature passed a law not this session, the session before, that said every district has to be open. So if we have students that want to come to Valley Center Public Schools from Hayesville or wherever, we have to let those students in. There's some policies and stipulations that you can put in place, but you have to let those students in. So those are things that actually our school board will be talking about policies in the next few months to talk about that out-of-district enrollment. We do get money for those students. Their parents wouldn't pay the taxes that go along with our schools, but the school does get funded for those students. How can you properly budget? Talked about that. We would cut some of the smaller things first if we're over budget in some areas. If passed, shifting of grade levels. When would shifting of grade levels happen? So what would happen then would be we would hope to break ground January or so, somewhere around that time of 2024. The school actually wouldn't be ready until the 2025-26 school year. So it'd be 2 years from this vote at the end of August is when we would be done and open. Will this allow USD 262 to expand further into Park City? Right now, there are no plans as far as district boundaries. Those lines are set. Those aren't movable. In terms of the school location, not sure where that would go. Definitely lots of possibilities in the future as far as where to go. So something would love to do business, a builder. You can definitely contact me. We can talk about that. Closed enrollment, talked about that some. I think, yeah, more money would be collected, pay the bond off sooner, talked about that. I think that's all the questions that I've got. If you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Ballots should start appearing in your mailbox here in the next day or two. Get those in as soon as possible. You actually, you cannot take the ballot, or the ballot can't just be postmarked by August 29th. It actually has to be received by the election office by noon on the 29th. So when you get that in the mail in the next couple of days, get that thing marked, get that thing in the mail. So please don't hesitate to contact us here at district office, myself, if you have questions, 755-7000, greg.lear@usd262.net. Be happy to answer any questions for you. We actually have, I'll be at the, actually you'll get this video after, so I'll actually be at the Valley Center City Council meeting on the 15th. I'll be there at 6:30 to answer any questions for the first 30 minutes, and I'll do basically the same presentation to the city of Valley Center. So please, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But that is it. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day.